is Monday the 10th, and it's really just following what our videos have been talking about. On Friday, we talked about the spheres of influence and how Machiavellian this whole thing is with the in foreign policy, not just the United States, with Russia and China. And then we hear over the weekend that the Iranians were meeting with the Russians to try to even more strongly solidify their partnership. That's the part of the Russian sphere of influence we talked about there with Hamas and Hezbollah, maybe Iraq down the road. Depends on how we deal with Iraq. And then, of course, ours with the Sunnis and Israel in the Middle East. So it's really starting to come together. Not really coming together, it's separating. But the Machiavellian theory is definitely there. It's what's going on. You can't get away from it, and we're there. And one reason we're still in this kind of position, why it's getting worse, is I just wanted to keep this so I can make a quote from it, is of course, we talked about the failed foreign policies of President Bush and President Obama, President Bush the younger. But here now we're seeing with Susan Rice, it's who is his national security advisor, President Obama, and one of the principal architects of his foreign policy. And, the Republicans have been accusing her of spying or looking into the people on the Trump campaign during the election and maybe after. And now we're looking at Susan Rice and looking at some of her quotes. And I sure didn't believe it and still don't. But you look at some of her quotes from before, especially when it comes to this chemical attack by the Syrians against the Syrian people, the Syrian government against the Syrian people, and then the Trump response when Susan Rice said, well, of course, Secretary Kerry said, we all know what we think about Secretary Kerry, totally out of it, totally failed. We got 100% of the chemical weapons out. That's a quote. John Kerry blew everything he touched. And then Susan Rice, who then said that we were able to get the Syrian government to voluntarily and verifiably give up its chemical weapons stockpile. Fail. 4 Pinocchios she got, just like he's going to be getting on this. Because, once again, the Obama administration was just looking to get out as fast as they could. They drew the red line. They blew it. They then tried to throw it back on Congress. They still are now, but as we said then and say all the time, you got the commander and you, the chief commander, you're going to lead the way through. And it was obvious he didn't want to do this. And now his people back it up, saying that, hey, yeah, we got everybody out. They didn't get all this stuff out. They didn't get everybody out like on other times when Secretary Kerry was talking about getting people into a safe zone or out of the kill zone. That here, they're both Secretary Kerry and National Security Advisor Rice were both saying, we got all those chemical weapons out. And then look what happens. Assad uses it the other day. And of course, we've seen chlorine being used and others over the last year or so since supposedly it was all cleaned out, but everybody turned their head because that was the easy way to deal with it. Now, here we are dealing with it. And this is why the spheres of influence are starting to roll their way through and just kind of make it happen. So keep watching. We see it separating in the Middle East. You're going to be seeing it in Asia, more so after the South Korean election. We'll see where we're going to be going there as we separate from the Chinese and solidify the Chinese, solidify with the North Koreans and any others who want to stick with them, and see where we go there. It's going to be very interesting, but it's definitely moving. It's definitely moving. Talking some outside the demo next, but until then, peace.